Bedford. I'm from New York City. I'm a psychology major, and I'm a senior here at Williams.
My name is Alex Dederick. I am a junior. I am from Aurora, Colorado, and my major is sociology.
My name is Malik Nashad Sharp. I'm a senior, which is kind of weird. I'm from Bayshore, New York, which is a suburb of New York City. And I designed my own major titled Experimental Dance and Live Art.
Michael Reed, and I was class of 1975, hometown, Cleveland, Ohio, and my major was psychology, and they didn't allow minors, but I took a lot of courses in, at the time, which was African American Studies. Now it's Africana Studies, so it was African American Studies and English, so those were the areas that I focused in addition to majoring in psych.
I'm Justin Jones. I'm a class of 2016 sophomore from New York City, and I'm going to be a history and Chinese double major.
You know, I had both my parents in my lives. I grew up living with my mother, but my father was always in my life. And I think they instilled the principles of having respect for yourself, respecting others, always attacking your goals, always being ambitious, being confident, having a high self-esteem, and just believing in yourself, regardless of what others believe, regardless of what other people's opinions of you may be, and just stay focused, stay motivated, and just to be a leader in as many ways as possible.
I think my mother was influential in my masculinity. I think when my parents got divorced, there was a very period of time when my dad wasn't really emotionally available or ready in handling that well. And so my mother kind of fit that role.
Definitely the first person that comes to mind is my dad, which is interesting because I've lived with my mom my whole life, and I see my dad a fair amount throughout the year, but I don't live with him, so I've never fully experienced, I guess, life with him.
I was raised closely to my grandmother and my mother. My father was not particularly in the picture. He was for a little bit, but like in and out, and I haven't seen my father in like many years, and I'm okay with that.
But in terms of what I definitely have learned from my dad, I guess is a sort of strength is what comes first. I think, to my mind, I would say when I think of him, I think of strong in a lot of ways. I think of it as physically, I think mentally, emotionally, but also I think it's interesting. Yeah, I remember when I was like 6 years old, I asked him, like, Dad, do you ever cry? Like, I've never seen you cry before. And then like one day, like he came back, and like we had just gone out to dinner, and then I think he was leaving me to go back to to Los Angeles, where he was living. And then he came back and like was like, son, like, you never seen me cry before, but like now I'm crying because he was leaving. It was really, really touching. So that was interesting because that was one of the first times I opened my eyes to the fact that I could cry and still be a man. And I was only 6, so I didn't totally know about what masculinity really meant, but it was really important to me to know that I didn't have to subscribe to some no emotion, like robot that was what I had to be. So it made me think that I could express my emotions and still be considered strong.
My mother and my grandmother are the two strongest people I've ever met in my life, and the work that they are expected to do based on our cultural experience, I felt was very annoying. So my experience was like, it's also a double standard. They would be encouraging slightly of this sort of behavior because they have an idea of what their roles are as women in the Caribbean household and what a man should be. My mom still tells me, like, she will refuse to help me with anything, like, monetarily, because she's like, you're a man, this is what you're supposed to do.
At the same time, to my younger brother and sister, I kind of had to step into the role of, a father figure type person, so I think when I was 12, there's only, so many ways I could really do that, but it was always, taking care of them. It was always help your mother, me setting the example. So whether that was in school, at home, always, obeying my mom, trying to help her any way I could. That's how I understood it was, taking care of business and a great sense of responsibility and duty.
I mean, my dad and my uncles were, huge influences on me. My dad had 3 brothers. My mom had 3 brothers. So we were, and they were close-knit. My mom's family and my dad's family were very close-knit. So when we would have family gatherings and do picnics, I was constantly surrounded, by African-American men.
So as far as black masculinity, I've always had a pretty loose, pretty open interpretation of masculinity in my opinion. So I like to think of black masculinity as just, how much people respect you, how much people admire you, what you contribute to your surroundings, to your atmosphere, the respect and admiration that your friends, your family members, your peers have for you, and just the impact that you have on the general community. That's what it means to be a black man, or to be a man in of itself.
So I think black masculinity at Williams College is, I think one is on some level you're expected to be, an athlete, or if you're not an athlete, physically fit. I think it's also that there's a certain domination over women's bodies. So it's about how many women you can attract, that kind of thing. Being smooth, being funny, being able to dance, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Cool.
And not necessarily known off the bat for, you're intelligent, you got in here because you're intelligent. There's always other reasons, at least, yeah.
It's particularly here, one maybe proves their masculinity based on, it's basically like how your class background influences your just state of being, and like how one is or is a being at Williams, I think has a lot is tied to masculinity in some way. Like I haven't really fully formulated a coherent thought about it because it's kind of complicated, but like I don't know.
Miller, he was another good friend of mine. Reagan and I lived there for both years, and because Mount Greylock ends after Williams College, so we were always here a couple of weeks after school ended, because we had made a commitment to be here with the high school students, and so we were here even after we graduated. We were here probably like for another 2 to 3 weeks, with high. So that was primarily, I guess, my focus. If you're talking about masculinity, it was more of a role model, and in some instances, reluctant disciplinarian, for the brothers when they were doing things they weren't supposed to be doing, which is what young, and I look back on it, I'm like, wow, that's really crazy. I'm trying to be a big brother, to some guys, and I'm only like 3 or 4 years older than them. I mean, they're high school students, and I'm, college junior and senior, so it was a little awkward.
I'd say most of my performance, I guess, was in contingent sports. I've always played sports. I was recruited originally for lacrosse here, and then I played a year, and then moved on to track. And I definitely said, in terms of performance, I mean, sports are definitely an arena where you do that. You're trying to prove your masculinity, your strength, and that's always a performance.
So I grew up playing sports my entire life, whether it was basketball, baseball, soccer. In high school, I picked up football and hockey. And what I loved about sports was just the athleticism, that combination of speed, strength, finesse. And each and every sort of athlete has their own ways that they sort of navigate through that terrain based on the sport that they're playing.
My dad bought me some boxing gloves, and I tried them out, punched the couch a few times, but that was more of a performance, I guess, than the real desire to become a boxer.
Yeah, my performance background was mostly in athletics.
Okay.
Since that's the category that we use, performance background, and for most of my youth, I ran. I mean, I started running the hurdles when I think I was 12, and literally, it's a funny story. We were watching. You guys might not remember this. It used to be Wide World of Sports. It used to come on Saturdays, and my brother and I were watching it. And I think we were watching like some NCAA championships, and we saw these guys running hurdles. We said, "Oh, that looks like fun." So we went in my mom's backyard and we got some sticks and bricks and things and made these hurdles, and I started jumping them. And I think the year after that, I went to the coach and said, "I think I can do that," and I started doing it. So that was the start. So.
And towards the end of the season, I started to realize that I wasn't really into football as much as some of the other guys who had played Pop Warner, played football since they were 6, 7 years old. So I realized that my heart wasn't in the sport, and just like anything in life, it's hard to pursue it and really be focused on it when your heart's not into it.
I think nowadays dance is becoming more and more popular, like as an activity for people to do. But back when I was younger, I think my grandparents put me in martial arts to like further discipline me. Like they wanted me to be, they were really strict, but not to the point of, craziness. But I think they wanted to further discipline me in some way. So they thought martial arts would be a good, and it was. I think it definitely helped. But for when I asked them if I could switch into doing, because I don't really like fighting. I didn't like fighting, so it was fun, but it was never something I really wanted to do.
I mean, I think all sports like that are an embodiment of masculinity. You're supposed to take on an enormous amount of pain. You're supposed to suffer through it. You're not supposed to show, let them see you sweat, that kind of thing. Yeah, and I think in terms of like Ritmo Latino, in some ways that is. It's not the same as track, because I think track is such like a violent sport. You're violently, pushing it back against the ground. You're in the weight room doing all kinds of things to really, purge all the weakness from your body. But I think Ritmo kind of offers a refutation of that because it's more of a partnership. You're leading someone only because you've been given permission to.
Performing is kind of maybe not the most stereotypically masculine thing that a lot of people do, or when they think of a man. So I think it's nice to be passionate about something that can kind of defy certain stereotypes. In terms of like the actual shows, I don't usually think too much about. I guess I do. I guess I do think about how manly my character is.
I think in terms of like Ritmo Latino, in some ways that is. It's not the same as track, because I think track is such like a violent sport. You're violently, pushing it back against the ground. You're in the weight room doing all kinds of things to really, purge all the weakness from your body. But I think Ritmo kind of offers a refutation of that because it's more of a partnership. You're leading someone only because you've been given permission to. But I mean, and at the same time, there are certain things that are just culturally a part of Latin dance, and there's always going to be the guy flirting with the girl, or trying to show. There's some sensual moves or whatever, when I think of like rumba, but I'd say that's a different arena, and that's where you can actually. I guess your identity is a little more fluid because you're doing dance, and I don't think that's something that Black men particularly are known for, as being able to dance, particularly Latin dance. Outside of like the hip hop realm.
I see performance as just a mode of expression. Whether you're writing lyrics, whether you're coming up with choreography, it's a way that you can express yourself and be free. Whatever ideas you have, whether it's anger, happiness, passion, and you can just put that into your dance, into your piece. So I think that's very important for Black men. Often we're oppressed within our society, and we look towards other outlets to sort of generate that creativity and to break free from that oppression.
Actually, the first thing I wanted to be was a fashion designer when I was younger. And the first college I ever visited was the Fashion Institute of Technology. Fashion to me is like, it's art. And art is performative to me, no matter if it's on the canvas or using the body. Art is a performance. The gestures you use to make a painting, the shapes you create with the clothes that you put on, all performative decisions or aspects of what we typically think consists of performance or makes up a performance. So
Yes, I definitely do. I always, it becomes actually a little bit of a source of stress. Like I always want to dress the best that I can, even just, especially the class. I think class is, it's important to me to look good when going to class. Because I like to hold myself to that kind of standard, because I think it, appearances are important. I think some of them are superficial, but I think in general it's a good complement to, if I can display a sort of, upstanding character and certain character traits that are admirable and things like that, and then I'm also dressed in a certain way. Like I would feel kind of weird if I was just in sweatpants and like a tank top or something, and then it wouldn't feel this. It seems like the admirable qualities wouldn't really matter.
I have a pretty unique style. If I were to look at some of my friends back home, especially in New York City, clothes are a little bit more baggier. Pants sagging a little bit. But I feel like, when I think of how I dress, you sort of want to dress for the goal that you have or whatever career that you're pursuing. Right?
I was in this group called Kappa League, which is a high school, mentoring program from Kappa Alpha Psi, which is predominantly black fraternity. And one of the first times I was performance was every Wednesday they would say, hey, wear a tie to school. This is how they wanted us to wear a tie to school and see how we were treated afterward. And so we would wear the tie every Wednesday, and I noticed I'd get a lot more compliments. So I'd get certain taken for granted privileges, things like that. And so I think from that moment I said, oh, okay, well, if I can say, if I can wear a tie and look very polished and well presented, there are certain things that I'm going to get that other kids who are wearing baggy pants or hoodies won't get. And so I think I kind of took that on to say, okay, well, if I want to be taken seriously, I need to dress the part. I think the other thing that kind of influenced me was that my mother would always talk about, cops shoot first, ask questions later, and if you look like any other black male, with baggy pants, stereotypes, you're putting yourself at risk. And so I never wanted to be in that position, because there were kids my age that had died, for senseless reasons, and it wasn't them that were at fault, and I was not trying to become a statistic. I'd say I'm not religious as far as like going to church every day. I think or every Sunday. I think the biggest thing was because it's Williamstown. I'm used to more like the Southern Baptist roots. And going here to the Baptist church was very different. And so I'll read my Bible, do my devotional, but I go back when I go back home.
I think it really is just a flow type thing. I've heard that phrase tossed around where your body is kind of in a Zen state, and some people get it when they play sports, when they draw, even read a book, do homework, and I think I totally get that with acting. There are some times where I have vivid memories of myself being on stage, or even in an audition room, like in a situation where there's like a lot of pressure on me, and like I can't even break my own concentration. Like I'm just totally in it and totally like nothing can stand in my way, like, and it just feels great, because usually like that's just not the way I feel on a day-to-day basis. Like I can psych myself into thinking, you know, a crazy whole lot of shit. So like it's really nice to be on stage or performing, because it allows me to get into that flow state and make me feel almost invincible.
My spirituality is, you know, being true to yourself, you know, being, having that sort of stable relationship between your mind and your body. So I guess in relation to performance arts, you know, that has a huge influence. When I'm dancing, I can sort of think about the moves as I'm doing it and as it relates to my body. When I'm teaching others, it's sort of like a nice spiritual sort of satisfaction that I get when I'm teaching someone else a move. And you know, other people that come to lessons and want to learn about the moves that we do and want to learn a bit about being Latino and about the culture behind these dances. So that's definitely you know, fulfilling spiritually to be able to educate others through dance.
The spiritual is what internally moves me to be physical. Being physical and the decision to be physical or be interested in the creative movement of the body, and dance as a field, putting it in front of people to see and experience, is definitely political. So it, especially if you know, like even being aware of the limitations that I have because of the color of my skin, based on what I can make. Like there are certain things that people will not understand. So it's just like pushing against. It's using the spiritual to enact a political maybe shift or change or challenge to the art world, to society, to whomever wants to watch the dance. I don't know.
And to, you know, bring home the bacon, so to speak, is always going to be a big part of masculinity, you know, and I think in anyone's mind. But I think for the most part, I mean, those kind of things haven't really changed much. If anything, you know, we talk more about performance masculinity, is, you know, as far as, you know, balancing, you know, whether it's your faith and your, I guess, outward appearance, and, you know, certain stereotypes around masculinity. I think I've become more aware of that.
I mean, I know my high school was predominantly girls, and I was friends with a lot of girls. So, and really just friends. So that was interesting, because it was not, you know, I had friends at other high schools that were, you know, more evenly balanced, and, you know, they'd be like, what, like, why are you friends with all these girls? Like, you know, that was, or like, they would be like, you know, who are you trying to get with? Like, so that made me think like, oh, I guess I need to like be surrounded by more boys. And actually, I kind of did want that, because I was trying to find more boys to hang out with. And so I guess my perception of masculinity then was still pretty flexible. Like, I didn't have this one path that I, you know, knew I had to go down.
And promoting them, and showing people that they have different outlets. You don't necessarily have to be an athlete, whether it's football or basketball, to get an education in order to support you and your family. There's other mediums for that as well.
Different ways to be a man.
Exactly, different ways to be a man.
I don't know that before I came to Williams, I would have definitely been more hesitant to say that somebody who was gay and, you know, even like very clearly gay, you know, could be considered like, you know, a man and like masculine. But now, you know, I think that's completely, I don't think that's true. I think it's very fluid. I think identity is fluid. I think masculinity is definitely fluid. It's not just a single track thing.
Seeing more varied ways of being a man were started in high school, and then at Williams, people talk about it a lot, or like people are really theoretical here, like to be intellectual about, you know, these things that we kind of don't. I wasn't questioning before I came to Williams, like masculinity or like performance. All of these things like are not things that I thought about before I got to Williams. And then talking about them here and reading stuff about them, I think, is how it's changed. But it's interesting because I mostly don't think about it. Like I just appear as I am, and I would say that I'm interested in masculinity. That's something that I'm interested in. I don't know what it is though. Like I'm not particularly sure what it is. So, and I kind of like that.
We don't.
Despite our country's history, I believe we have the resilience to stand up, come together, despite various differences, because there's a common humanity that binds us together. It transcends race, transcends gender, it transcends perceptions of masculinity. It's a common humanity. So it's as I opened with, it's an honor and a privilege to call myself the president of this such a great, wonderful, illustrious group of people in this great nation. Thank you very much.
Cool.